Hello. The episodes covered in this video will take us to the middle of season 2 of Space Cases. So I guess I'll get right to it then. The first episode of this section was Long Distance Calls, the one where they find a telecommunicator uh, somewhere on the planet, and they fix it up and they use it to do what the Krista can't do apparently, which is call home, phone home, as ET would say. And everybody gets their turn, I think. Yeah, pretty much. Even Susie has a little widget that she can attach that makes it good for interdimensional talk. So um, get to meet some new characters. Catalina is the one who Susie talks to. She doesn't talk to her parents. She talks to Jewel State, making a nice little cameo and reminding us that she is not with her family. She is stuck in another dimension, so she's still, and that would have made a fun spin-off, like Jewel or Catalina in another dimension. That would have made a fun spin-off if they could have kept going. But I guess back in the early 90s, that wasn't the thought process necessarily with shows like this, that, ooh, we have this main thing, but we can do more things separate, and it wouldn't have even worked necessarily, because if they could use her, they would still have her on the show. It would have made a great spin off, but for a bunch of reasons, it doesn't make sense to do that. But it was a good episode for exploring the growth of characters, seeing where the characters come from, especially Harlan again. I feel like he was set up for needing the most growth, and his encounter with his stepfather, who is also Commander Goddard's boss, superior in some way, a lead star dog, was interesting. Harlan apologizes for something, and his stepfather goes, "An apology from Harlan Band. This is new," or something like that. And so it just the fact that he apologized, we, the audience who have watched him grow, we see that that's not the kind of person that he was known to be. Um, let's see. The device is conveniently limited in the time that it will be available to use. So it's only an episode's worth of making phone calls, but still, better that little bit than none. There's another touching moment with Harlan on the phone when Bova's been trying to reach his father and can't, and then his father calls back but reaches Harlan, who describes himself as a friend, and he goes, "Bova has a friend?" And that's a nice, that's another small growth thing. Bova is kind of he's the wit, comic relief. He hasn't, that I've seen, really had growth character-wise. He's kind of similar to Rosie, but she's starting to grow too. Throughout season 1, they were kind of just the kids, and the older kids were developing, and so Bova here, and I think Rosie also, are starting to show more maturity, and they're getting an opportunity. But that little detail was, oh, Bova has he's different than is expected now, based on when his parents last saw him. The episode has a couple of monsters, powerful vines on the planet that ensnare people and have to be pulled or cut apart. Those are frightening, but also there's a couple of space pirates, including one who apparently has a history with Goddard, and another who is played by Rum Tum Tugger from the Cats movie / musical. Let's see. Apparently, we find out that the kids and Goddard and Davenport were presumed dead, and there was a funeral, and it was a very nice funeral. We find that out from Davenport's boss, who is similar to Harlan Band's stepfather being Goddard's boss. We see the parents of the parent figures. So Goddard and Davenport are the parent figures, and we see the people who discipline them. And so it kind of makes kid viewers identify a little bit more with the adult characters. And Davenport apparently finds out that if they ever make it back, she will have to find a new job. She's been fired and replaced. Well, they thought she was dead, and she's been replaced, and now she's fired because they know she's alive, but her job is not hers. Let's see. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but and it's something I think I noticed more back then, and then on repeat viewings, it's kind of background noise because I'm used to it. But they don't refer to Harlan, Davenport, and Goddard as human. They refer to them as Earthers, and that might be, I guess, a more, if you're going to call Catalina Saturnian, Rosie Mercurian. I prefer Mercurial, but Mercurian, then Earther makes more sense than human as far as interplanetary language. I made note. This is the second episode in a row with remote control restraints. Just a note. It's kind of like when there were two Animorphs books in a row that had alternate timelines. We find out that Rosie can spit fire in this one. She is restrained, but she kind of makes chewing motions, and she chews up a little fireball, and she spits it out, and it burns someone. Let's see. The teleport special effect. The Rum Tum Tugger character can teleport, and it's pretty neat for early '90s science fiction. In the restraints are two part. There's kind of automatic tape that wraps around you, and then there are bolts that attach to the temples, and those were what the remote control restraints. So it's kind of psychic restraints. But they also taped up Bova's antenna, and that was cute. Ultimately, Susie uses her psychic entering the other person's consciousness to Reaver is the guy's name. He's the non-Rum Tum Tugger one. And she enters his consciousness to force him to loosen the restraining bolts, and I wrote down psychic combat is still uninteresting. For anyone who's ever watched Psychics, South Park did a great episode about how when psychics go at it, it's just two people staring at each other. And so I just wrote that down. Nothing against Susie or anything in it. Since she's controlling him and he's fighting back, it's actually a little more interesting than two psychics fighting, but all she's doing is staring at him. So that's all that I wrote down for that one. Fun little episode. Let's see, the next one, King of the Hill. I thought I was going to watch this one and cringe a lot, but I didn't end up doing so. The Hill are some of the planet's natives. They're humanoid. They seem to all be played by little people and kids. And at first they start off speaking in a kind of a language that sounds like Ugawug, like the song that the Indians sing in the Peter Pan musical from the 50s, or the way that they talk in the Peter Pan movie from the 50s, the Disney one. But once Harlan, who they capture because he looks like their reincarnated king, drinks from the cup of all words, I think. Yes, the cup of all words, and he can understand them. So I don't know if it's a universal translator type thing or some kind of drug, but he can suddenly understand them. So they're speaking perfect English and often sassy English. There's one of them who speaks, and he gets pretty sassy. So another kind of fun episode. They capture Harlan. They braid his hair, which he ultimately decides to keep braided. And this is the first time I've caught that's why his hair is braided. I just thought it was a kind of like changing the look of the Christopher season 2, changing the look of the star. But they braid his hair, and then he decides to keep it because Susie says she likes it. He is deemed King Colossal, which I kind of took to mean it's a society of little people, and their king is an average-sized person. I don't know exactly what went into that. Like if the person he was reincarnated from was also bigger than them, but King Colossal is the name that he gets. Um, let's see. No one else drinks from the cup of all words, but they kind of all when the rest of the space cases find the hidden temple, they all kind of understand. It's not the best episode, but it's got some nice, fun visuals. A subplot involves the harvest of giant fruit so that they have things to eat, and then the natives send them back um, with some fruit and some other kinds of foods that they had harvested, and so it's at once appropriate and inappropriate that I'm watching this in the lead up to Thanksgiving. Let's see. Any more? Bova and Davenport get caught in the fruit and they have to eat their way out. Bova likes to eat. That is an ongoing thing about Bova. Well, he's a growing boy. And when I was first watching these episodes, I was approximately that age and eating a lot then as well. There's a very cool moment where they need the hill need King Colossal to fight a monster that's been terrorizing them for 100 years, who turns out to be a 214-year-old little kid. He at one point shoots an arrow at Harlan, and it is Thelma of all people who just reaches out and grabs it right before it hits Harlan. I thought, oh, that's a nice. Thelma's usually funny and a database, but she gets a nice little action move there, and like mechanical reflexes are pretty good. So let's see, Harlan. Oh yes, wants to get rid of the braids until Susie. So it's just a fun little distraction of an episode. Truth Hurts this is where we kind of find Rosie's growth kind of comes into a clearer thing, because suddenly normally I do one side of notes and then I would have written the notes here, but I forgot to do that this time, so the notes are here, which I'll find a way to not waste the back of the sheet. But I just wanted to point out that mistake that I had made, which is somewhat wasteful. But I'll try to make sure it doesn't become wasteful. But here in this episode, we see Rosie really wanting the approval of the older kids and kind of wanting to be in on the gossip in a way, in a kind of a subconscious way. I don't know exactly. But she starts spilling people's secrets, sometimes accidentally and sometimes deliberately. And that just struck me as, oh, she's kind of growing up. She's interested in who's interested in who, and which might suggest that she's interested in somebody. It's a way of her growing up and becoming an adult and talking about adult things. We know that Susie thinks Harlan is cute from the last episode of season 1, but this episode confirms it. She thinks Harlan is cute, but she prefers Radu as a person, I guess. Which is a nice way of creating a little love triangle, which probably the honors would have gone to Catalina if she were still on the Krista. We get our first looks at the true guts of the Krista, like beyond the engine room, the real power center of the Krista, kind of a honeycomb-looking arrangement of little tubular rooms, because Susie is fixing it at this time. She's got to find a crystal to line up, and I don't know the physics or engineering of it, but there it is. But so we get some new sets, and that's cool. Rosie says sorry a lot, and I say sorry, but she says sorry, and I think that the writers just really like the way that Paige Christina said sorry, which was, in their defense, adorable. But it's what she finds herself saying because she's spilling people's secrets. She's making them feel bad and learning when to keep things to herself. But she says sorry a lot, and she does in previous episodes, but she really says it a lot in this one. I think the writers really liked it, and and well, the show went out in Canada and America, and but I think that uh, it was a bigger deal that it was on Nickelodeon in America, and so maybe there was an element of Americans will find this amusing. I don't know. I find it cute. Um, do we ever find out what? Oh, Goddard is apparently, and we didn't see him leave, but he wasn't in King of the Hill, and I don't know if we know. I don't know if the actor just wasn't available for long stretches or if it was a budget thing, but he's gone for several episodes, and then he returns in the episode after this one only to be sidelined again, and so I don't know if he just wasn't available or if it was a budget thing, but they sideline Goddard a lot, and we do find out kind of what his expedition was, but Davenport says he was on an expedition, but we didn't see him leave on the expedition. We just find out at a later point that he's on one, and I don't know that we ever find out really what it was all about, other than keeping him off screen for whatever reason. Thelma prints coordinates, and as usual, it comes out of one of her orifices. Susie, when she is handed the coordinates of the crystal that she needs to find by Thelma, having it printed out of her mouth, wipes it on her jumpsuit. And maybe that's an instinctual thing. Something comes out of someone's mouth and it ends up in your hand. You wipe it off, but Thelma wouldn't have saliva, would she? Gets back to, well, the crystal is part living matter, so maybe. This is where we get the first kind of clash of Susie's not a student, but so she doesn't want to take orders from Davenport. She wants to go out into a storm where she will be able to breathe, but it might be windy and dangerous and electrical storm. And Davenport doesn't want her to go. So she says, I'm not one of your students, I don't have to listen to you. But then Davenport says that she's a ranking officer on the ship, which is a good point. And showing that they are not only students and teachers and Susie, but also they have their ranks. And if she wants to be part of the crew, she has to accept that. Bova and Rosie, so, of course, naturally, this being a dramatic show, Susie does put herself in danger. Harlan and Radu, the suitors, try to rescue her, and ultimately everyone of them, those three, the older kids, are rescued by Bova and Rosie, who have real superpowers. Radu is really strong, Susie has the psychic thing, but when facing physical dangers that are not just physical, but also electric or having to do with, let's see, Bova tracking the storms, tracking some kind of ammonia storm that will make it hard to breathe, but that storm goes off, but he's also tracking an electrical storm. Now he is a very powerful electrical conductor, and so he goes out to protect them from the electricity, and Rosie uses her heat beam to cut one of those powerful vines so that they can climb up out of a pit. But what I'm getting at is they have real kind of superpowers, and they save the day. The younger kids who are growing up and looking to be respected by the older kids save the day. And then I wrote down some shots make it look like the set is very small. It looks like this show was filmed on pockets of set, maybe all in one big room, but small pockets of this is this, and it's only so big, but we're going to make it look huge. The last shot or the last scene in the episode is kind of a mirror image of the first one for Rosie entering. Everybody's sitting around, and Rosie enters last and is accepted the way in the first episode of season 1, Susie entered last and was accepted. So that was a nice poetic thing. Last episode was Homeward Bound, and I wrote down, it was one of the last things I wrote down because I wrote it down horizontally or vertically, whichever way I'm holding it. Harlan and Radu make good friends. Now that they're getting along, they work together really well, and they seem to make a good team. That is depicted very well. So in this one Goddard returns from his expedition. that Krista is being geared up so that it can take off again, but there's no real hurry, except Radu gets a psychic message from Elmyra, which is confirmed later in the episode by Susie going into his mind and seeing it, that the Spung are going to find them and destroy them. And it's a great scene when Susie goes into his mind, because she prefaces it with, "I don't want to do this. This is an invasion of privacy. I might see something you don't want me to see, and then where are we after I'm out of your mind once I've seen it?" But it's important to him and for the safety of the crew that she goes in. So it shows the nuances of the situation. She invaded his privacy because he knew that it was necessary for the safety of everyone. The Spung have a moment where so the Spung are still pursuing the Krista for some reason. And the reason is they want the weapons that they presume it has, which we still haven't seen firsthand. But they also have the kind of classic kid villain moment of, "We'll get those kids," or a band of kids is no match for the Spung Empire, something like that. And I wrote down, at least Visser 3 always assumed he was fighting Andalite warriors. He had his comic villain moments in the Animorph series, Visser 3 did, but he thought that he was fighting adults. And the Spung are approaching meddlesome kid ridiculousness, but not quite there yet, and at least Warlord Shank didn't do it. These are different Spung. Harlan and Radu, both into Susie. That's the previous episode. But so she might have a crush on one of them. They both kind of have a crush on her, but that doesn't get in the way of their working relationship. They work as a team, as a crew, and that is an important message that the show was sending. That you can, maybe your feelings are unrequited, but that doesn't mean that you just shut down or shut that person out. You do what needs to be done. You, whether you're classmates or castmates or co-workers, just do what needs to be done, and the feelings will be fine, ultimately. Susie talks about wanting to go back to her dimension, and I'm wondering how easy that will be, since it took the explosion of a spaceship to get her into this dimension. Something that might have been answered at a later time had the show been allowed to go on. And they've got the whole, our whole mission is to go home, but now we might actually get to go home because we're going to take off. I kind of like not being home. I've kind of gotten used to it. That whole classic sort of trope of, I'm going to miss everybody. I want to be a crew. Harlan says, I go home, then I've got years and years and years before I get to be a Stardog. Out here, I'm just a Stardog. I may not be officially a Stardog, but I am. And they all have a kind of independence. So it's a trade-off, because they had that episode where they really wanted to talk to the people back home, but on the flip side, this is not as lousy a life as they assumed it would be. I'm going to try to finish this up soon, because I don't want it to be another half-hour long thing. Seeing since the ship is on the ground, they built the set of the head of the ship where the eye opens up, and of the eye of the apparent bird or fish or dragon or whatever opens up, and they can enter, and that's the entrance exit. And it's cool to see that they built that set. They actually built a part of the outside of the ship. I liked that. Seeing that. And there's the terrifying but hilarious line from Thelma when they're trying to get everyone back on the ship so they can take off because they know the Spung are coming. Thelma is asked, is the commander on the ship? And she goes, actually, the ship is on the commander. And that would be terrifying if it have a spaceship on top of you. But she's funny, and it's just a funny line. Funny idea that they've been trying to take off. The ship is going up and down. The vines are holding it back, and the way that she delivers, again, it's funny because it's so scary. It's one of those laugh so you don't lines. Let's see. Oh, and a couple of nice external CGI shots of the Krista flying first out over the lake. They crash landed right by a cliff, and so they had some nice views. But then when the ship takes off, it takes off the cliff, and it's flying over the water as the sun is setting, and the water is purple and reflective, and it's very nice. And then the new silver Krista up in space against the black of space looks very nice also. So I miss the old look of the ship more than I did when I was a kid watching, but it's still nice looking, very, very old looking CGI, but also nice looking CGI for the time and for nostalgic purposes. And one last thing, someone has the line, Rosie, the medical type, has the line, the Krista's living systems help heal the commander. Just an interesting detail about the ship. It's not just that the machines are built to facilitate human or whatever organic. It's not just medical devices. It's the ship itself, maybe doing that thing that Jedi's can do now, where they use their life force to infuse another being with life. I don't know, but this is very long, so see you next time. And one more thing, I've had a couple of comments, not too detailed, but people seemingly grateful to have someone talking about this show, and I've appreciated getting the comments because there's not much that I've been able to find as far as discussion about this show on the internet. So please leave comments. Tell me things that I've left out that you think are important to note about these episodes, or just express your love for Space Cases, or one of the characters, or any element. See you next time. Bye.